Everyone talks about how hard it is to become successful, but no one really talks about how hard it is to handle success when it finally comes. Because the truth is, success doesn't usually destroy you at the bottom. It waits until you're comfortable, until you're confident, until you're absolutely sure you can't lose. This is the story of a man who did everything right, built something from nothing, got everything he ever wanted, and then lost it all, not because he failed, but because he succeeded. His name was Raymond Hart, and the warning that could have saved him, he heard it years before he ever needed it. It was graduation day. Raymond stood on that sunlit lawn in his black gown, 23 years old, full of fire, full of plans, absolutely certain that the world was already waiting for him. His grandfather, Edward, a man who had built a freight company from a single van, 40 years of early mornings, and a stubbornness that refused to quit, pulled him aside before the crowd swallowed them up. The old man held him by the shoulders, looked him straight in the eye. No smile, no small talk, just this.
Raymond, I know you're eager to go out there and get successful. But when you eventually make it in life, and you will, beware of your success. Because success isn't the end of the journey, son. Sometimes, it's where the real danger begins.
Raymond nodded respectfully, shook his grandfather's hand, and rejoined his celebrating friends on the lawn. He didn't understand it. How could success be dangerous? Success was the goal. Success was the answer. Success was everything he had been working toward. He tucked those words away like an old receipt, received, but never read again. Raymond didn't wait for opportunity. He went and built it. Straight out of university, he took an entry-level job at a logistics firm in Manchester. No complaints, no shortcuts, just work. He was the first one in every morning, the last one out every night. He asked questions nobody else bothered to ask. He listened when others were already talking. He learned everything, fast. By 28, he had saved enough to go out on his own. Hart Logistics Limited. It started small, a modest office, a handful of clients, a team of 6 people who believed in him enough to take the risk. But Raymond worked like a man who had something to prove. And slowly, the contracts came, then the referrals, then the growth. 6 people became 20, 20 became 60, revenue doubled, then doubled again. By 32, a national business publication ran his photograph on their front page. The self-made man reshaping British logistics. He framed it, hung it on his office wall where he could see it every single morning. That evening, he rang his grandfather. "Granddad, did you see it? We made the front page." The old man chuckled softly.
Well done, lad. Well done. Just remember what I told you.
Raymond laughed warmly. "Granddad, I'm fine. Everything's under control." And for a while, it truly was. Here is where the story changes. Not with a crisis, not with a scandal, not with anything dramatic at all. It changed quietly. The way a slow leak changes a tire, you don't notice anything is wrong until you're already on the ground. Raymond stopped attending vendor meetings. He had managers for that now. He stopped reading contracts line by line. His legal team handled it. He stopped asking hard questions in the boardroom. The numbers always looked good. The hunger that had built everything was slowly being replaced by something far more dangerous. Comfort. He started trusting his gut over his data, started dismissing warnings as small thinking, started surrounding himself with people who told him what he wanted to hear, instead of what he needed to know. And maybe you know someone like that right now. Maybe you're building something yourself. And somewhere along the way, the very habits that got you here have quietly started slipping. The check-ins you used to do, you don't do anymore. The people who challenge you, you've slowly stopped listening to. If that's you, stay with this story. Because what happens next is the most important part. Richard Cavendish walked into Raymond's life at a London networking event. Smooth, well-spoken, the kind of man who made you feel lucky just to be in the same room as him. Richard claimed access to government infrastructure contracts, deals worth 10 times Raymond's current revenue. The figures looked extraordinary. The opportunity felt undeniable. Raymond's operations director, Margaret Clark, a woman who had stood beside him since the very first day, pulled him aside after the meeting. "Raymond," Something doesn't sit right. We haven't verified a single one of his contacts. The due diligence hasn't been done. Please, let's slow down." Raymond smiled, patted her on the shoulder. "Maggie, I've been doing this for 9 years. I know what a good deal looks like." He signed the contract the following morning. It started unraveling on a quiet Tuesday in February. The bank called first. A major loan repayment had bounced. Then his accountant called. 3 months of cash flow projections were built entirely on contracts that did not exist. Raymond reached for his phone, called Richard Cavendish. No answer. He called again. No answer. Richard Cavendish had vanished, along with every pound Raymond had committed to the deal, drawn from company reserves, secured against his personal assets. It was a fraud, sophisticated, calculated, complete. And Raymond had walked straight into it with his eyes wide open and his guard completely down. Within 6 weeks, creditors froze the accounts. 3 of his largest clients walked away. Staff wages went unpaid. People handed in their notice, quietly, without drama, the way good people leave when they've lost faith. And the office, that glass-walled City View office in the heart of Manchester that he had spent a decade earning, grew quieter every single day. Until one evening, it was completely silent. Raymond sat on the floor of his empty office the night before the lease expired. Chairs stacked, computers gone, teams scattered, 38 years old, sitting in the ruins of everything he had spent his life building. Outside, Manchester carried on, buses, rain, people heading home, the city entirely unbothered by the wreckage inside this room. And then, in the silence, he heard it, not out loud, from somewhere deep inside, in the voice of a weathered old man on a sunlit graduation lawn 15 years ago.
Beware of your success, because success isn't the end of the journey, son. Sometimes, it's where the real danger begins.
He closed his eyes, and it all became unbearably clear. He didn't lose his business because he lacked ability. He didn't lose it because the market turned or because luck ran out. He lost it because success had made him stop listening, stop questioning, stop being careful. The very humility that built everything had been quietly replaced by the arrogance that destroyed it. Success hadn't just cost him his company. It had cost him the best version of himself. He bowed his head, and for the first time in years, he wept. He drove to Yorkshire the next morning. His grandfather was 81 now, slower on his feet, reading glasses on the kitchen table, a pot of tea already made. But those eyes hadn't changed at all. Raymond sat across from him, a mug of tea going cold between his hands. He didn't have a speech prepared, no explanation, no defense. He simply looked at the old man and said, "I understand now, Granddad." Edward Hart nodded slowly. No, I told you so, no lecture, no disappointment worn on his face. Just the quiet grace of a man who had always known this conversation would come, and had spent 15 years hoping it wouldn't have to. He reached across the table, placed his worn hand over Raymond's, and said,
The first time you build something, son, fear keeps you careful. The second time, if you're wise, wisdom does.
Raymond rebuilt, not immediately, not easily, and not alone. He called Maggie first, the woman he had dismissed, whose warning he had waved away with a smile and 9 years of misplaced confidence. She answered, and she came back. Together they started again, smaller office, fewer clients, a leaner team. But this time, every contract was read personally, every risk review was reinstated, every warning was welcomed. He stopped surrounding himself with people who celebrated him and started keeping the people who were brave enough to challenge him. He stayed curious, he stayed careful, he stayed hungry, and slowly, steadily, Hart Logistics rose again, not with the noise of the first time, but with the quiet confidence of a man who had learned the most expensive lesson of his life and refused to waste it. Raymond now mentors young graduates. He sits across from them the way his grandfather once sat across from him, and at the end of every session, without fail, he tells them, go out there and get successful, work hard, back yourself, build something real. You have everything it takes. But when you make it, and you will, beware of your success. Guard the habits that got you there. Keep the people who tell you the truth. Never stop doing the work that built you. Because success isn't the end of the journey. Sometimes, it's where the real danger begins. He always pauses after he says it. He looks at each face in the room, because somewhere in that room is always a Raymond heart. Someone on the climb, someone getting comfortable, someone one bad decision away from losing everything they've worked for, and he wants them to hear it the way he never did, not after the fall, but before it. The trophy doesn't protect you. The process does. And the people who challenge you are not your critics, they are your guardians. Never stop practicing the process. Never stop listening to the truth. If this story spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. It might be the warning they never got. Tales by Cathie.